Last night we had candidates for the elementary school district, and I got to be thinking about why do we do these kinds of things, meet the candidates meetings, and what is this all about? And it's about what I boiled down to some things I've learned in my teaching experience. One is there's a word that's often used to address the challenges that cities and towns have, particularly now at this point in time. And it's becoming more and more popular to talk about resilience, bouncing back from adversity. So, in my background, I spent probably 3 or 4 decades learning about how do children respond to adversity. And the research has shown that despite the fact that many of us might think that if children face tremendous adversity, they're going to turn into terrible adults. Many of them don't. They turn out just fine, okay. Now, of course, some do, and they need all the help they can get. But researchers asked the question, what is it that protects children and adults who experience adversity? And they came up with, after a great amount of research, some very straightforward things that are worth thinking about as we frame what we want the city of Princeton to be like. And so there are 3 categories of things that protect children. So they grow so they can be healthy, productive adults. They work well, play well, live well, feel well, those kinds of things. First one is not what you generally hear about in politics, but it's love and caring support from somebody. May not be the person, their own parents sometimes, maybe a school teacher or the janitor or a bus driver or somebody that they meet who is like a mentor and cares and supports them in making difficult decisions. So that's one. The second is high expectations. In other words, they not only hope, but they expect that the child will succeed. And if you think about applying this to a city or a town, same kind of thing. Certainly, you've heard me talk about, we have very high expectations of our city, particularly our city government. And that's the challenge. We have extremely high expectations. We don't always have the budget to reach them all. But nevertheless, that's one of the criteria that helps a city survive adversity. And third is participation and involvement. It's a protective factor. People support that which they help create, something they are involved, they're stakeholders. And they don't just assume somebody else is going to do it. They see somebody who leads the way, who does the work, and they get involved in it. And that's one of the things that I began to say last night is that this election is somewhat discouraging, but also makes me optimistic. And it's discouraging in the sense that we don't have more people at events like this one, that we don't have more people who are involved in active civic engagement. So anyway, 3 things that help us respond to and survive and thrive after meeting adversity. I think all of us would agree we have as a country and even as a city been through a good deal of adversity. It's love and caring support, high expectations, participation and involvement. And remember that. Now, Edward Boyer used to be the commissioner of education. He said, look, all people need certain things to thrive. He said a sense of identity. I think Princeton's pretty good on that. But how do we see ourselves? Who do we identify with? How do we identify ourselves? It's as though we're saying, look, we are somebody too. We're important to ourselves and to other people. Second is a sense of control. We are able to control some or most of our lives, the decisions that we have control over. We learn how to achieve what we want to achieve. So a sense of identity, a sense of control. Lastly, this is something that I think Princeton is very good at, and we need to build it even more, a sense of belonging. Where are you from? Who are your friends and neighbors? What do you come back to? I'm always talking, when people say, where do you live now? Princeton, Illinois. What are some of the strongest attachments that we have? And the most successful events, frankly, the Homestead Festival is what brings many, many people back here. So every community of somebody's needs sense of identity, a sense of control, and a sense of belonging. Now, particularly tonight, as we wrap up this series, there's something else that's relevant, sort of the ABCs of what makes successful towns. It's called asset-based community development. Instead of always looking at the problems, you look at the resources and the strengths and the assets. And it's not only money, it's where do you turn to get things done? You go to churches, we go to our neighbors, we go to leaders of all kinds who will see a challenge and address it. So asset-based rather than always looking at needs and problems. Community development is what we're talking about tonight. Not only how can we, look like we are totally in control of our lives here and have good business sense and success in business and economics, but what this is about, I think tonight and in sessions like this and in the future is if we focus on the positive, we use a very successful strategy that is simple to remember, asset-based community development. And tonight's talk will be from someone who I think buys into all these things and is going to talk to you about what his vision is for the city, how he sees things that work, how he finds out what kinds of things that work, and he'll take questions that you have, and it'll be an interesting discussion. So, Ray Maybry.
Thank you, Rick, and thanks for coming tonight. I know everybody's got a busy schedule, so I want to say thank you for being here, and I mean that in all sincerity. I thought what I would do is, if I could, Rick, I'm just going to give a quick bio of myself, my background, and then I've got a few common stuff that I'll make. So I've been here since 1959. I came here via Mayoral Hospital, and I've stuck around for 63 years. I've had a couple of breaks in service living here in Princeton for some other things I did short term. But anyway, I've been in the community my entire life. Hopefully, I'll stick around. If good Lord gives me 30 more years, that would be great. I've got a spot out at Elmont Cemetery waiting for me. We'll go from there. So a little bit about myself. A lot of times I use the term we, and one day somebody said, well, Ray, we say we, who is we? And of course, then I joke and say, well, that's me, myself, and I. But with professional counseling, I'm just down to me. And so they laugh at that. But I will say a few I's here to start with, and we're going to go back to the we's that I enjoy doing. I was born and raised here. I graduated from Princeton High School back in '77, attended IBCC. I studied law enforcement. I didn't quite get my 2-year degree in, so I'm not quite there. I need to go back and finish that up. Back then they called it criminal justice. I wanted to be a Princeton police officer. That was my goal. Reality hits kind of back then when you find out that they could hire an officer maybe from the sheriff's department that already had this called Police Training Institute, this training that could save the city $4,000. So you kind of were always on the back end of the list of people to be selected. I did serve as a jailer for about a year at the sheriff's department on nights. That's a real interesting experience of booking people. But I enjoyed law enforcement. But I decided to move on. I had the opportunity to work at a place called Illinois Power down in Hennepin. I was there for 8 years. And then I opened my own real estate office with my wife, Vicki Martinson. We were married 30 years, and then unfortunately I divorced, but we started Success Realty, and we were fortunate to be blessed with 2 sons, Joshua, who's 40, and Jonathan, who's 38. They both live in the community, which makes it great because then my grandchildren are in the community. So that's what we're all after is grandchildren. During the whole process of growing up, I was active in scouting. I was an Eagle Scout. I also had the opportunity at age 32 to join the Army Reserve. It was something I had an interest in doing. I always heard about the National Guard, heard about the reserves, and I thought, man, I'd like to serve. Went to see a recruiter, and he said, he said the age limit is 35, but we like old people like you. He said, let's see if you can pass the physical. And like all good soldiers, you stand there in your underwear all day long being poked and prodded, and they said, you know what, you're in good health, we'll take you. So at age 32, I was sworn in, went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for basic training, and I stayed there for an additional 10 weeks. So I was gone for training for about 6 months, came back, and I was fit as I could ever be. I could run 2 miles in about 13 minutes, which was pretty good for an old dog. I was the oldest person in my platoon down there during basic training. The drill sergeants were all my age. And as they always like to say, Private Maybry, if you keel over on us, we got so much paperwork to do, you're gonna wish you would have died. And they added a few explicit things at the beginning and the end, but basically that's the gist of it. So basically, I've always been self-employed. I had one real estate company, then after I divorced, we started Harvest Realty. I've been blessed to be married to Lisa Stefani. She's over here quiet. That's what the pharmacists are really good at. They're very quiet people, and Lisa's very supportive of me, and I appreciate that. She's right there helping me and prodding me along in a positive way. She nicely says, "Ray, you need to get some new clothes," or "Ray, you need to do this," and I appreciate that. And I don't, it's like when I go to the barber, some people, when you go to the barber, and a lot of us here in this room go to JR, I spend the same $15 and I feel like I've been robbed because there's not much there to work with. And there's some guy's got a full head of hair for the same money. But anyway, I think that kind of gets us caught up. I probably missed a few things. I served 8 years on the city council. I enjoyed doing that. I served, I've been off the council for 2 years now. And we do some volunteer work around town, which I really enjoy doing. And now at age 63, I would say this, I value my time more now than ever. And for you folks that are maybe my age or even a little bit older, we soon realize that we don't want to waste our time and our assets, so to speak. I will say this, if somebody's got a flat tire out there in the parking lot, I'm going to gladly go out there and help them change that tire. But if that person is on their cell phone laughing and carrying on, and it's the middle of summer, they got the air conditioning on, I'm gonna ask them to at least step out and stand there while I change that tire. They got to have a little sweat equity to the whole thing, right, wrong, or indifferent. So anyhow, long story short, I think that gets us up to speed where I'm at now. We've really been blessed with my business has done well, the real estate business has done well. The community's been good to me. On the Maybry side, it's just 4 generations that have been here in Bureau County. On my mom's side, which would be Piper, we go back 7 generations. We're some of the first settlers that came into Bureau County. Very interesting. That would be the Pipers, and there's a good rich history behind the Pipers. Excuse me. So that's me. I just wanted to say, and Rick's going to have probably a few comments here or questions, but my top 3 priorities, and I guess I said top priorities. I don't know if I want to call them 1, 2, and 3, but I think about public safety. I think it's important that we continue to keep Princeton a safe community that we've all enjoyed. I think we need to be concerned about the crime and the drugs. I have a doctor that he's a good man here in Princeton that says, "Ray, we really have a drug problem, and it just has not gotten any better. Matter of fact, he feels it's gotten worse." We have to worry about homeless people. Last year, we experienced maybe for the first time right in our face a gentleman that was sleeping under the caboose, and we're not sure what to do. I stopped a couple times, brought meals, talked to him, and we just didn't know as a community what to do with that gentleman to try to help him. Under public safety, I'm concerned about employee safety, the employees of the city of Princeton. I'm concerned about pedestrian safety. I'm concerned about mental health. And I know things, just basic things like, and I know we do training for the city employees, but we need to make sure every city employee is properly trained in CPR, because we all appreciate the opportunity for people to be taking immediate action should we have a health crisis or a medical crisis. The second thing I would touch on is economic development. And I know that is so overused, but I think it's important we look at retaining the jobs we currently have. A neat little company that's very quiet that just keeps building and building is out in what I call our first industrial park, and it's called Express Lighting. They're actually breaking ground this past 2 weeks. They got the concrete board. They're putting another addition on. That little company out there, they employ, I think, 26 people, but they are constantly adding jobs very quietly. You don't hear much about them. So we appreciate the jobs that are already here, that we can hopefully retain those jobs and do whatever we can to retain those jobs. And then, of course, we need to create new jobs. I want to give kudos to the current city council, to our current mayor, the 4 council members that worked hard to bring Ollie's distribution center to Princeton. It's a win-win for Princeton in so many ways. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit here. I think the final step I would say, or point would be promoting good governance. So promoting good governance is kind of an umbrella of these things. I think that we need to cooperate with fellow taxing bodies. I think that sometimes there's been a disconnect with how we get along with the county board. I don't need to tell the county how to run their lives, because I think as a mayor, I'll have enough to do to worry about what we got going on in our community of 7,900. But I think we need to have a good working relationship with that county board and make sure that when they talk about Princeton, they do so in a favorable manner. I think we need to do the same thing with Princeton Township, and we'll come back to that. I think the same with the library, the building we're in, Park District, we need to cooperate with them, the elementary school, the high school, IVCC, and I even put down things to the Soil and Water Conservation District. And as we work to become a more sustainable community, they're going to come into more play now more than ever in what they do, including a good example is the pollinator garden that was put in probably about 7 years ago out here on the library. And that's city-owned property, so the city was very cooperative in that endeavor. So we want to work with our governing bodies, and then we want to work together as a council. So I want to come into this with an open mind and be able to work with the 4 council members that I will be cooperating with in a positive manner. One of them is here tonight, Jerry Newman. We've got Hector Gomez, we've got Marty McCransky, and Mike McCall. So what I envision will happen is to make sure that they're on board for communicating, is we're going to make sure that once a week an email gets sent out. This is my goal, and I'm going to be sitting down to the city manager, so I don't want to sound like I'm saying something that she's not aware of, it, which is probably a little bit, but she knows that we need to communicate. But it'd be nice to have a report from the city manager get emailed out once a week to the council members and saying, hey, this is what happened the past week. Just an overview. We don't have to have all the details. We had a city manager, Rachel Skaggs, that would do that, and she would always put, if you need more information, feel free to call. Sometimes what happens as council member, we get a little bit embarrassed. We don't know what's going on. And I know that there's 2 sides, but people say, well, the council members need to go communicate more with the city manager, but it's just nice to have a report. I remember one time I had a gentleman and his wife stopped me on Main Street. I said, Ray, you don't seem like you're too concerned about my wife and what happened. I said, well, I apologize. I said, what happened? Well, she tripped about 4 weeks ago in front of one of the storefronts and on a crack. And he says, and I want to show you where that crack is. So literally, we went over to where this crack was, and 4 weeks later, it's still there. And it's very common to have sidewalks when they freeze and thaw, they'll have an adjustment in their height. Well, once the frost is gone, that's when we need to get in there and grind these things down. And sure enough, that crack was still there, that trip hazard. And you know, his wife, unfortunately, she fell, she broke something, and then she was in physical therapy, and it's just it's not good. And for me, not knowing about it, I should at least have a little general idea, so I could have extended my concern to her and not been surprised by that, because he made it very clear he's disappointed not only in me, but disappointed that I wasn't aware of that. And we've got, you know, we've got cracks and sidewalks and irregular surfaces all over. It happens. It's a process you just got to keep working on. I want to make a couple more comments, and then we'll stop for a second. I'm sure Rick's got a few things, and then I do have some handouts to give. The past month, I wanted to go visit other city councils and see how they operated. So I went to LaSalle. And that was about, say, 4 or 5 weeks ago. That was a 2.5-hour meeting. And the folks over there, public comment time, it lasted for about 45 minutes. Real genuine concerns over what happened with Carrot Chemical and the fire. You know, it's very sad. That I remember seeing that mushroom cloud that morning. I was over by Cedar Point when I looked over there and said, whoa, what is that? It was huge. I had a nice visit with the mayor, Jeff Groves, after the meeting there. We had a nice visit, and he was very welcoming with the idea that I was running for office. I went to the Peru City Council meeting. I went to the Geneseo City Council meeting, and I went to the Spring Valley City Council meeting. I still would like to get to Ottawa and Mendota. So the goal was to go watch another council meeting in action, to see what they do, see if there's something different than we do, or how we can tweak our council meeting. Very interesting. I really enjoyed it. The difference in leadership of different communities. So that was part of my homework assignment. When we were discussing solar, I drove down one morning to Champaign to see the solar farm that is down there on the south side of the University of Illinois campus. I'm going to be heading to Bloomington. The city's getting ready to purchase this device to incinerate the brush. I talked to the public works department there yesterday, and very nice lady. She said, come on down, we want to show it to you. I'm kind of a hands-on guy. I like to see things. I like to view, see how it works, and touch and feel. And sometimes you have to do these field trips, which I think Lisa gets a little suspicious because I try to stop at Portillo's. I know that that's not good for the waistline, but I know where Portillo's is in northern Illinois. Rick, with that, I'll stop for a moment and if you've got some questions or comments.
Actually, I don't.
Well, then, I have more information if you want to get going.
Well, let's start with any concerns or ideas that you all have you want to talk about, Roy?
What jurisdiction would soil and water conservation district have inside city limits?
Sure. So it's interesting, when you look at your tax bill, and I brought a copy of a tax bill of a local company in a positive way. The very bottom of your tax bill, Bureau County Soil and Water Conservation District is down there as a taxing body. We're very fortunate to have those folks right here in our own community, just, their offices out there on Backbone Road. We're fortunate to have Warnicke Woods, for example, that was given to us by Marie Warnicke, which is a great asset that's out there by the Red Cover Bridge. So the Soil and Water Conservation District, through people like, she just retired Ellen Starr, for example, are very anxious to help us with coming up with pollinator plots, coming up with a community that's got more of a green, sustainable landscape, maybe eliminating some grass and putting in some different prairie plants and prairie grasses, things like that. So they're a good resource for us.
But the city owns it and the SWCD is managing it?
On which one? On
Warranty.
that's correct. No, the city has nothing to do with it. We just enjoy the benefits of it through Warnicke's. Now we have a hybrid situation with the city county park, and I'm going to be sitting down my first 90 days in office. I want to go to these different taxing bodies and meet with their board just to introduce myself, and that way they know who I am officially, and then they've got a good target to shoot at if they need to shoot at me. And I just joke to say that. But the city county park, the city of Princeton actually has ownership over part of that park. And there's an example where we contribute $1,000 a month to them to help them do their maintenance. But one of the community safety concerns I have is the exit and entrance out to the city county park is, to me, is just a death trap waiting to happen. When you get ready to pull out of there, and at 63 years old, I still feel like I can make things happen, but you look to your left, that's not the concern. As you get ready to pull out, you look to the right, and man, I roll down my window, so I just want to make sure if I hear something come up that hill. Then I gun it, and then I look in the rearview mirror to see if I've got a grill of a Mack truck. And we just need to figure out a way to solve that problem, working with the state of Illinois to get that entrance moved further down to the south. And that would be, in 4 years' time, if I could get that done, man, I feel like that's really a accomplishment. I don't like the alternatives of that whole thing.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or issues that come to mind? One of the things that Ray and I've talked about, I will confess he's my landlord, so I got to be careful. But having experience with lots of different landlords, I can tell you it's nice to have somebody you can talk to and who will listen to you. Now, you will mop up the floor next week.
Yes, I understand. Janitorial service.
No, but one of the issues that Ray often talks about is maintaining things. If he's a reader of something called Strong Towns, and he's shown me an article about what do strong towns do to stay strong towns. And the article, I don't know whether you brought them tonight, but he has a real commitment to, if you build something or buy something, make sure you're thinking about how you're going to maintain it. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Okay, very good. So Lisa's going to hand this out, and so I brought a total of 6 different handouts, and I think it's worthy of your time to read these. So you won't be reading it as we speak here, but you can certainly take it home. But basically what this is about, it says here, if we're not going to maintain what we have, then why bother building anything new? And it talks about how down at Disney World, they're constantly maintaining things. And that's one of the reasons if you go to Disney World or Disneyland, you're always so impressed with what goes on down there, whether they're painting or doing shrubbery or greenscape or just complete renovations of some of the different places. So it talks about how important it is to maintain what we have. Now, they talk about how in some ways government likes to take on the next big project. And so fixing a sidewalk is not what I would call sexy, but man, it sure is a way to solve a lot of problems. And so the idea here is that we need to step back and say, okay, what do we have currently that we can just fix and maintain in a positive way instead of taking on the next big project. I'm all, for example, of improving the parking lot at the train depot. But there's been times when I'm up there picking up trash and doing my thing that I like to do, that there's been weeds along certain sections of that. And it just annoys me that we have weeds that we just need to get in there and spray Roundup. And I want to give an education on weeds. Some of you are weed experts too. But if this is the ground, if that weed gets this tall, at that point, if you spray Roundup on it, you come back a week later, you've successfully killed the weed, but he's smiling at you because he's still standing there that tall. And so the point is, you got to eventually take that weed down and then maybe come back and spray some Roundup a week after it has some new growth. But for example, right now, and it's been this way for a couple of years, I just let it sit there, but where you pull up for the handicap parking on the bricks there, and you got this railing, the railing itself, it's time for a coat of paint, but more importantly, they put down these, they call them erosion socks. So the erosion socks are this big a diameter, and they look like giant snakes that there must be about 40 feet of them. And that's been there for 3 years now, laying there. And the other day I was up there and I should have went back with a broom. There's a piece of tempered glass that's broken, that the glass is sitting here this big by this big. And then there's Gatorade bottles and things like that. Now, some of that, it's like when you clean the restroom, you can clean the restroom and come back 10 minutes later and you go, holy smokes, what are they doing here? And so we understand that. But a lot of times it's just a matter of maintaining things. We want to have new projects. We know that. We got to maintain what we currently have. And until we have those funds, and I know that some people are excited about grants and things like that. And I think grants are okay. As a small business owner, I think, okay, there's a grant, and where's that money come from? Well, somewhere it's going to come out of your pocket, my pocket eventually. And so we have to maintain what we have, be good stewards of what we have. And I have to be reminded of that because I've got, for example, Lisa and I, we have a building that's 10 years old, her pharmacy, my office, 10 years, we already got wear and tear. I got to go and do some painting. Rick Brooks, we were able to work with him, with his bike place. We renovated a building, and that building needs some work this spring. So we have maintenance we have to do. Maintenance is not always fun. You always want to go on to the next project. And us Maybrys are very prone to do that. We have projects we don't always get finished. So when you get home tonight, it's a very good article, Strong Towns. I think you appreciate that. And then Rick, if you don't mind, I'm going to talk about, I know by 8 o'clock, we're all going to want to get out of here. I want to talk about a neat little community. So when we take these field trips, we look at communities that we can learn from because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. When we came, Lisa and I, we take off for a weekend and we go places. So Omaha, Nebraska. We go to Columbus, Indiana. We go up to Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I always take pictures of things. So she gets tired of, she's so supportive. So I'll say, man, I got to get a picture of that. Let me pull off the side. So wherever we are, I go take the picture. The other day we were over at Heritage Harbor in Ottawa. If you want to see a neat little subdivision over there, it's been going on for about 15 years now, but the developer came out of Naperville. It's right along the Illinois River. And when he first started this, they had to build a marina, and then they built these big houses, and then all of a sudden they built these little houses that are like 14 feet wide by 30 feet long that sell for $400,000. And now they got the next generation. They just built these 5 little buildings that are only 12 feet wide and about 20 feet long. And so there's 5 of them like within about 15 feet of each other. And I was all excited. Wow, I gotta go take a look at these. So Lisa sits in the car and she'll come along sometimes, but I'll be right back. Well, of course, 20 minutes later, she's like, oh, where did he go? Well, I got up there and the people that were working on a Sunday afternoon, I made a presumption there was workers. So I'm up there and again, not going into their property, but standing there on the sidewalk and taking pictures. And this gentleman comes up and says, sir, can I help you? I go, I said, just excited about this little project. He goes, well, can I help you? I said, well, just want to take some pictures. I'm a realtor. Usually if you say you're a realtor, you get a pass. And he goes, well, we own this property. I said, oh, I said, I'm sorry. I said, and so he said, well, I want to give you a tour. So that's where the 20 minutes came in. It's a neat, and I took pictures of it, but there's a gentleman that has got a project in Bureau County and he wants to do the exact same thing. And so I took the pictures, I emailed them to him. I said, here's the contact, because I got all done. These people live up in Wheaton that are building this. They come down on weekends. And so I said, I got their email address. So anyhow, we resource other people. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So the next one I want to talk to you about is a good field trip. This is a town called Casey, Illinois. That everybody in this room can go visit Casey, Illinois. This town is 3 hours away down south. I just a show of hands. Has anybody been to Casey, Illinois to see what's going on? Okay, would you agree it's pretty cool? Okay, Casey, Illinois, and what you'll find again, it's an article that you'll read later tonight or tomorrow. It's worthy of your time. But there's a man, I better back up to this. we had heard about Casey, Illinois, and you think, okay, what do they have to offer? Because I don't want to be going to the Wisconsin Dells. The Dells just irritates me. I go up there, it's like, it's just too cheesy. But it's got 12 or 13 of the world's largest or Guinness Book of World Record items. And you think, now, what do you mean by that? It's got the world's largest rocking chair. And this thing is 3 stories tall. It's got the world's largest mailbox. It's got the world's largest barber pole. It's got the world's largest pencil, the world's largest ruler. Now, as I tell you that, you're saying, this seems cheesy. The gentleman that started this, he's a owner of a company down in Casey, Illinois. They employ about 300 people. And they travel the United States and they work on big bulk oil tanks. So it's a welding fabricating business. But everything is done so correctly. When you look at the world's largest rocking chair, and this is not something that somebody cobbled together on a weekend. It's a work of art. The world's largest mailbox, you go up to a set of stairs, and where the lid opens up like this, you walk out on the lid, and it's got a nice little handrail. Everything is powder coated. The fit and finish is just unbelievable. And then you think, okay, so I like to get the whole picture. Remember, we grew up with Paul Harvey, some of us in this room, and Paul Harvey used to make a lot of money. I'm talking about the rest of the story. But the gentleman's name is Jim Bolin, and I put it here. It says he's a local business owner. And there's a good article about Jim Bolin. He's adopted his community. This is his home, but he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars downtown. And you will not find a weed. Everything is manicured, no trash. It's just spotless for this little town. And everybody should go see Casey, Illinois, and see what they do. We're not going to mimic them and say we're going to have the world's largest whatever. He's got this mouse trap that is like so tall, and it's got the springs and everything. And it's got the little symbol for Victor and everything like that. It's just everything is done right. And so I would just say this. This will be one of my campaign promises. If you drive 3 hours to Casey and you didn't find it to be worthwhile, I'll pay for your gas, okay? And I'll pay for your gas going both ways. So that's a promise, okay? They've got a religious background, which is not bad at all. The gentleman, they have a cafe downtown, and we were there on a Sunday, I believe it was, because it said, nice little sign says, we're open 6 days a week if you're here visiting. We're sorry we missed you. However, we take Sunday off to have time with our family and go to church. And you couldn't argue that. That was good little field trip. Again, I'm going to help subsidize that field trip if you don't think you got your money's worth. The next thing I want to talk about is sales tax. Now, sales tax is a big thing, and we have lots of different ways of generating sales tax through property taxes, through sales tax if you're buying items at the grocery store or buying your car in town, things like that. And then we have different things that like pillow tax. So we're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to focus for just a second on real estate taxes in Princeton or in Bureau County. And so I'm going to give you a copy of a tax bill. Now, these tax bills are public knowledge, so I don't want to say, why has he got a copy of somebody else's tax bill? This is a positive story. This is a tax bill from Ace Hardware Distribution. So again, thanks to our current mayor and city council by working with Ollie's. This will be an example when Ollie's eventually comes down to the tax rolls, because I remember when Ace Hardware came to town, there were people in town that said, the city's subsidizing Ace Hardware. They're going to come in and they're going to be here for 10 years to get their subsidies, and then they're going to be out of town. Did anybody hear that story? It was like, oh my goodness, they're come 10 years, they're still here. Come 20 years, they're still here. Come 30 years, they're still here. Ace Hardware is a tremendous neighbor for our community. If we needed something from Ace Hardware, they're there to help out with their donations, and they're very generous. We've got employment there, say 500 people working. I just want to focus for just a moment on their tax bill. Ace Hardware contributes over $605,000 in taxes a year. And it's fun to see how it's all broken down. That's the value of this tax bill. The school district, for example, District 115, gets $203,000. And actually they get some of their retirements paid out of there of another $10,000. So they get roughly $15,000. The high school gets about $140,000. The park district gets $55,000. The library, where we are right here today, they contribute $16,000 to the library every year. And then the retirement from IMRF and police pensions is $63,000. So a lot of good things going on there with that tax bill, all in a positive way. We need to thank the leaders of Princeton 30 years ago, that Mayor Dick Welty and the other 4 council members that worked to get Ace Hardware to land here. I was at a meeting. It was more of event over at Starved Rock Lodge about roughly 20 years ago. And the mayor of Peru, there's 4 mayors that spoke at this. It was a supper meeting. It was like the State of the Union for Bureau County and South County. So the mayor of Peru was there speaking, the mayor of LaSalle, the mayor of Spring Valley, and I think the mayor of Oglesby. Princeton wasn't involved with it. It was a regional thing, but Princeton wasn't there. Each mayor got up to the podium and said about 10 minutes words of what was going on in their community. Mayor Baker, first thing he did, which I thought was a great leadership thing, the other 3 mayors didn't do it. I'm not picking on those mayors. First thing he did is, before I can begin my comments, he says, I want to thank the alderman that I work with every day that makes things happen. He said, I'm going to list off the names of the aldermen. I want them to stand and then remain standing until they've all been called. So before he gives any of his remarks, he lists off all his aldermen. They stand up. Everybody gives them a rousing applause. And then they start singing this song. It's the song about Peru. And they sing the song for about 2 minutes because I think, wow, they've got their own little song. And the whole audience starts swinging back and forth talking about Peru and how great it is. And you couldn't help but buy into that. Mayor Baker, just a great mayor. He was there for like 36 years as mayor. But anyway, Mayor Baker in his comments, I'll get back to Ace Hardware. It must have been just after Ace had decided to move to Princeton. He said, I want to say one thing to the audience, that we fought very hard to get Ace Distribution to come to Peru. He said, we weren't successful. He said, they ended up going to Princeton. He said, I told my staff, I said, I want to know why they chose Princeton over Peru. And one of the reasons why they did is what Mayor Baker said was, the folks came down from Oak Brook, Illinois, from corporate, and they brought their spouses along. And they looked at Peru, and they went downtown Peru, and they went to Princeton. They looked downtown Princeton. And by a large yardage, the spouses all felt they wanted to live in Princeton. They liked the ambiance of Princeton over the other communities. And he said, this is the American. He said, at that point, I knew, even though we focused on the Peru Mall and been successful out there, we needed to put more money downtown. As you notice, Peru's trying to do that. They have put more money into it. So we can learn from other communities. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So that's a nice little handout for you. I got another handout for you. And hang on here, let's see. I've got a handout of what I call a hotel summary. One of the things that we have in our community is a pillow tax that we charge 5% for you to spend the night at a hotel in Princeton. Let's say the American is $100 a night. We get $5 out of $100, or they charge $105. The Airbnbs is a new source of revenue, and our current council is working on figuring out how we can tap into that, because they also are supposed to be paying that in, and they are going to be paying it in. Some of them already are paying it in. So I want to give you a hotel summary, and please thank you for doing that. As you hand that out, it's some interesting information. You're having all these homework assignments. When you go home tonight, you can read these. And when you go to a cocktail party, I don't think people do that anymore. You say, "Did you know that?" You say, "Wow, that's exciting." Okay, I don't know. Yeah, I've never been to a cocktail party. Okay, so here we go. The hotels in Princeton. There's a total of 4 of them. The Rachel Skaggs was our city manager at the time. I asked Rachel, I said, Rachel, let's go for a drive and let's go visit each hotel, and we'll meet the hotel owner or manager. I'll go ahead and get some apple pies. So we got 4 apple pies, and we decided we'd go visit them about 10 o'clock in the morning because we didn't want to get there too early when they were checking out people. So we started our little adventures that day, and we started at the very north end. The Super 8 Hotel is at the very north end of our town across the interstate. The owners are Jill and Kusam Patel. Nice people. Would you believe, as we introduced ourselves, he said, we've never seen anybody from the city of Princeton here. He said, we are glad to see you. He said, and we're also glad to have your apple pie. So I said to him, tell us a little about your hotel. And Bill said, absolutely right. He said, we built this hotel, he said, 35 years ago. He said, our kids went to Princeton schools. He said, they both graduated. He was telling me that one son went to University of Iowa and the other one went to another university, and they've been very successful. They didn't stay in Princeton. He said, we eventually want to retire. He said, but this is our livelihood. And so I said, well, how many rooms do you have? So I'm taking notes without acting too obtrusive. They have 35 rooms. So Dill and his wife, very, very nice people. I pulled up their real estate taxes. They pay in $31,643 in real estate taxes, but also, of course, we're getting our pillow tax. I don't know how it's broken down, how many dollars that we get from them. And really, I don't think that they would probably want me to tell how many dollars they get because that's their personal business as far as how many nights they have people staying in the hotel. But I do want to kind of give you an overview of these 4 hotels. The next place we went to was the Days Inn. I always say the Days Inn's the one right behind Wendy's. And that, when I was growing up, that was Holiday Inn at one time. And they had, remember, they had what's called the Brown Derby in there where the restaurant was. That was when it was at its peak. Well, they have 82 rooms, and the manager is Raj Tripathi. And the manager was not in. We dealt with the lady behind the counter. She was a recipient of the apple pie. We had a nice visit with her, and they paid $24,632. That's the most current tax bill. The Econo Lodge is the hotel behind the Big Apple, and this guy's a character, Ken and Mina Dave. Now, this is cute. I'm not telling you the negative stories. When Rachel and I went there, as soon as we identify ourselves, it's always fun to say, this is Rachel Skaggs, our city manager. He goes, oh, he says, let's sit down. So he goes, they brought coffee and tea and water, and we sat down there, and then, but it was so cute. He said, next time you need a room, said for the city of Princeton, he says, you call. He said, we take care of you. Okay, that was great. And from now on, when I see him, it's the same thing. Ray, he knows me. He said, do you have any time to stay a visit? He said, we take care of it. So I appreciate that, Ken. So he has 42 rooms there, and he pays in $24,000 worth of taxes. And then we have the American, and this is the big gun. It's owned by Biage Sherwood. He has 64 rooms, and last year they paid a whopping $124,000 in real estate taxes on his facility there. 64 rooms, and we know the Americans. It's a beautiful facility. I added the Road Ranger truck stop for just for the fun of it. That poor truck stop is, again, we're not criticizing tonight. So if you go home and say, Ray, seem kind of negative. But when it comes to truck stops, we're fighting a losing battle. You've got, and I know I've got some people in the fuel business that remind me of this or tell me this. If you're a truck driver, you've got a really nice new truck stop that was put in about 2 years ago over near the Atkinson Anawan exit. Now you got all the newer ones that we put in over at South Peru, plus Oglesby, and there's a brand new one coming in about another month. It's going to open right there at Peru on the north side. And they all have hot food, which you call real restaurants. They don't just serve what we call roller dogs. You know what a roller dog is, right? Okay, that dog's got more miles on it than people have in their car. Okay, but I would say this: the Road Ranger right now, if you were to drive out there, they really are trying hard. They got the trash picked up. There really isn't too many weeds. But man, you go by there and say, I get up early. If I go out there at 5 in the morning, let's say I just drive through, there might be 10 semis there for the night. It's just, there's just not much going on. They, and when you talk to professional truck drivers, when you get a chance, they say they really like to have a hot shower and they want to have a real meal when they call it quits for the night. And for the same amount of price for the fuel, they're going to stop before Princeton or after Princeton. So, so when I identify a problem, you're going to say, well, how do we solve those problems? And that's going to last longer than 8 o'clock, and you guys are going to kick me out of here, and I want to go home too, so to speak. I'd stay longer though. But I was here the other night when
you can't stay long.
Boy, it's vicious. 8 o'clock.
Tough around.
So anyway, that's real estate tax bills, and I have 3 more handouts. Rick, do you want to take more questions or?
Well, just a couple of questions. There was a study on a marketing study for hotels in 2018. And I was looking at the numbers today. And one of the things that happens if a hotel wants to come to Princeton, they really, the good ones won't do so unless they have a pretty good idea of whether they can make some money here. And that study took place and it did predictions about what hotels might be able to make if they built one here, sort of day by day, month by month, year by year. That was 2018, so it was before the pandemic. What are your thoughts about hotels here? Because that's a pretty big gap that comes up over and over and over again about when people talk about economic development.
Okay, I'm familiar with that hotel study because the city spent about $9,000. They had a study done, and I know that when we went to visit with Biage Sherwood and his wife, we were given a lukewarm reception because the person that came to do the study stayed overnight at their hotel, and they were not happy to find out the city was spending money to find out whether to have another new hotel. And it's just all about communication. But we bring in $160,000 approximately of pillow tax a year. I've got my notes here. Maybe it's 145, 150. So we have to do, in my opinion, we have to go to the 3 lesser performing hotels that just need a little love and say, hey, you know what? We'd like to help co-pay a little bit or work with you. Let's say you're landscaping. We think that maybe if you decide to do some landscape work and it's gonna be $5,000, we'll kick in half that. We'll take the pillow tax money and we'll bring in $2,500, what you pay in to go back to do the landscape project, maybe freshen up the lobby. So I'm not gonna be judgmental tonight, but I know that if I got off the interstate and I didn't know this community, I'm gonna go to the American. But I tell you, the second choice, the Patels, I fell in love with them out there north of town. And they've got again, I'm not gonna say they've kept their maintenance up like the American, but to answer your question, we have 4 hotels, and the one behind Wendy's, man, you drive around the back and the swimming pool's all caved in, and there's plywood up on the 4th level where there's windows that have been broken out, and that poor hotel's it's pretty tough shape. So would we like to bring a new hotel to town? You only have to go up to Sterling Rock Falls. In Rock Falls, right along Rock River, is a beautiful hotel that was put in about 5 years ago. It's not on any main drag. You gotta go off of Route 40 by about a block and a half to get to it. Would we see a hotel come to town? Another nice hotel? Unfortunately, unless it takes the same footprint of one of our lesser performing tired hotels, we'll end up with the other ones blighted. You know, when we think about how we learn from other communities, in many ways, when I was growing up, the place to go was the Prue Mall. You go over there, Baskin Robbins, you sit there, watch people come and go, and burgers, all that. You walk through the Prue Mall now, and Lisa gets kicked out. I say, let's go walk over to the Prue Mall. Say, okay. So we park and we walk. Now that place is spotless. There's no graffiti. The tile floor is spotless. The rugs as you come in are spotless. They're not full of salt. But the whole point is there's nothing there. Have you been to the Prue Mall lately? There's nothing there. It's just bad. But the same thing happened with their hotels. They had a lot of hotels out there on the north side of the interstate that were blighted, and they can turn them down, but it's very painful. Sometimes they sit there in disrepair. Kind of like right now, we've got the old Wise Guy sitting there. It's got a new owner, but it's just sitting there kind of dying on the vine.
So what do you think we might do to get another hotel?
Okay. Well, it's tough. You know, I apologize. You know, the challenge is, a hotel owner that's a real sharp operator that's got investors, they're going to look and decide if they can make it work in Princeton. They know more than you and I. They know their business. So probably the reality check is to contact a couple of those sharp operators and say, come down to Princeton, tell us, is it feasible? They'll tell you, they don't even need to see that report from 4 years ago. They can look at their competition. They can say, yep, or they say, nope, or you know what, we can make it happen. But you know what? The city of Princeton's got to write a check to help us out. And at that point, we have to decide. And then what happens is when we subsidize the new kid in town, then the people that are slugging it out right now, they're going to have a challenge because we've kind of upset the playing field. It's like the Becker family's been they've been so blessing to Princeton. Daryl and Marcia and the Becker family, they got the corporate offices over there on Thompson Street, but they have 2 Casey stores that they compete actively with. But we as a city never gave any incentives to the Beckers, and we never gave any incentives to the Casey family. So the point would be it's a level playing field. And the open market in theory should tell us that we should be able to get a new hotel in town. Yeah. Now, can we encourage that? I think going back to, we got to make sure that the hotels are here. If we could help give them a little financial incentive out of the pillow tax they pay, they kind of tidy up things. I think that goes a long way.
So like the facade grant from the chamber?
Something that is, yeah.
You mentioned the Peru Mall. There's been discussions about converting a lot of malls into housing developments and apartments. And that's an issue that Ray's brought up with me many times, is there is a challenge with housing, not just real estate in general, but particularly housing for people starting new families, not necessarily abject poor or abject rich, but they want to come here. Any thoughts about housing in Princeton?
Sure. So we look at the spectrum of existing homes for sale, and we look at the spectrum of new home construction. I should have resourced Pete Nelson, our zoning department personnel, to see how many new building permits we've had issued like last year or the year before. I know it's really down because we don't have too many building lots left, especially what I would call lower end price building lots. So new construction has been very quiet in Princeton. People have been building a little bit more out in the country for various reasons. They want to be able to have, that 2 or 3 or 5 acres, maybe have those chickens that we outlawed in Princeton, so I said it nicely. I was a fan of chickens, you know, I thought 6 chickens in the back corner with no rooster was a good compromise. I mean, we got people on Hudson Street that got chickens for 30 years and they love their chickens. The neighbors love their chickens. But the night that I taught that, I brought pictures of the chicken coops. There's a young gal that's right there on the curb at Elmont Cemetery, and she's got the cutest chicken coops. They have wreaths at Christmas time. She loves her chickens. And I brought pictures of that. And then we got a house over in the 600 block of North Chestnut that's got a stockade fence. It's a complete disaster. The yard is all mud. 2 years later, it's still exactly the way it is, mud. The stockade fence, Lord, when it falls over, you look in the backyard. It looks like when I was growing up, we had Bobby Class with our local junkyard man, and he'd be offended if I compared his junkyard to that backyard. Right? Do you remember Bobby Class? Yeah. Okay. Robert Class would be mad at me. Can I share another handout?
Sure.
Okay, I know we got about half an hour.
He's about to give you a did you know here, I think.
Okay. But anyway, we're gonna move on. You know, it's not. I just felt like I lost that battle, and I think that the chickens done properly could have been a success story. If you can have chickens in neighborhood Oswego, Illinois, we should be able to have chickens. Okay. Next thing is the Illinois Gaming Board has a video gaming report for Princeton. So I'm going to give you a copy of this. This is interesting statistics. And Lisa, thank you. By the way, it's Lisa's birthday today. You want to say happy birthday? Please.
This is isn't that amazing set of statistics? Not Lisa's birthday.
Okay. Yeah, right. Oh, so as you pass this out, again, it's something that is interesting. But yeah. Okay. You're good. I appreciate you being here helping. Okay, so here's the statistics. This is from January of 2022 to December of 2022. So it's for 1 year. It's the city limits of Princeton, and it's kind of hard to read, but basically it gives every gaming establishment where you can do video gaming in Princeton. And at the very bottom, it says 19 establishments with a total of 101 machines. So you go into Susie's, whatever, 6 machines, you put your money in, ding, ding, ding. Okay, so it says waging activity. Last year, $56 million was wagered in the city limits of Princeton. Now, you're going to go, oh my goodness, you have to understand that's what was the amount played, and the amount won was 52 million and some change. So the difference is $4.6 million. So I call that slippage. That's the difference between obviously what somebody wagered, what they lost, what they won, and at the end of the day, what was brought in, 4.6 million. Out of that 4.6 million, the state of Illinois gets 33%, the city of Princeton gets 5%, and the balance left is split between the host, which would be, for example, Susie's, and the gaming operator, which is, there's a couple different gaming operators in town here that have their machines. So the whole point would be is, we as a city, the municipal share would be the very last column on your right. At the very bottom, we got 231,000 last year. And then Jerry will be able to tell me, I apologize, I believe we charged a tax of $250 per gaming terminal. So we grab, so if there's 6 machines at Bex North, we charge them a $250 license fee per machine. So 6 times 250 goes all the way down. And so we generate 101 machines times $250 per machine, plus the 231,000 last year we got. And you'll see the state share, and you'll see basically the rest of the how it's divvied out. So it's just interesting to see where our money went. Now,
but let me just get clarification. How many millions of dollars went out of Princeton?
4.6 million. And the biggest terminal was actually the Princeton truck stop. It's called Road Ranger. They're 9.9 million. But close behind that is Bex North at 9.2 million and Bex West at 8.6 million. And there's money in gambling. Now I want to share with you to kind of as a reference. Again, I've got the statistics from 2019. So we got 2022, 2019. The total back then that was wagered was $35 million. And we brought, and what was won was 32 million. And so the difference, or what I call slippage, was 2.8 million. So just in 3 years' time, we went from 2019, a full year, 2022, we gambled 56 million from 34 million, and they lost 2.8 million to 4.6 million. So it's interesting to see that slippage. And I got my own personal beliefs on what is going on in our community as far as some things that, as far as, I think that, I know it's another story, but I think that, I don't like the term that we are a poor community. I don't like the term poor, but I think there's places that just kind of scattered where people have not maintained their homes, have not put money back in. And I think we have all these distractions in today's world where we got video gaming. When I was growing up, again, that starts like an old person. But I remember we'd have to get on a bus and go over to Riverboat to gamble. We weren't just go to the gas station and go in the room and get free pretzels and soft drinks and sit there and spend your money. So I think it's easier to spend your money on a lot of different things. So, all right, go ahead.
Well, when you think about 50-some million being bet on these machines, it essentially leaves town. It doesn't circulate in town, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so there's a movement nationally for several decades now about localization. And there's been a lot of research done on what happens when you spend money with a local independent business versus a chain store or a big box store or an out of your town bank, for example. Only today in the news, it was discussed with the major bank failure in California, a couple of other ones, that people are tempted to take their money out of smaller banks and put it in bigger banks because they think it's going to be safer. So the issue of localization becomes very, very important. There have been studies on money leaking out of small towns. What are you thinking about that notion? I mean, if you spend your money in a small town with a local business, locally owned, it's likely to circulate 4 or 5 times in town rather than go to a corporate headquarters somewhere else. What are you thinking about how we can promote Princeton rather than somewhere else?
Okay, so I don't want to be the hypocrite that I preach that I spend every dime in Princeton, and then you see me at Farm and Fleet this weekend. So I would just say this. I would say this. I try real hard to buy in Princeton. I say myself and Lisa. We use RP lumber, for example. We do renovation work. We own some property in Princeton. We deal with Delbert and Jim down at RP lumber. We bought windows for your bike shop. We had to wait 12 weeks for them, but that's just how it works. We bought Anderson windows. We bought all of our supplies we could buy there. There's certain things that you need to look at ceiling fans, or if you need certain things that you got to go to Menards to pick out. We understand that, and Delbert and Jim know that from RP. My Red Wing boots. My Red Wing boots, I get those up there, VA Anderson, and I love my Red Wing boots. Yeah, we're talking about that. So, but by and large, you know, I mean, we work real hard to see if I can answer your question here. The car dealers are the second largest source of retail sales tax in Princeton, and Prescott's and Peel's, or it's called Princeton Motors now. We've got 2 Fords in our family. We both bought it at Prescott's, and we tried really hard to buy our vehicles. And I know I've got friends that you know, they have Subarus and Toyotas and things like that, and they love them, and I understand it. So I try not to beat them up. I don't just want to share. I could have brought the tax bills. Peel's out there. They're at almost $80,000 a day spent on real estate taxes every year. I got a good education once from an older gentleman that owned a Ford dealership here in town. His name was Glenn Browning. Did anybody know the Browning family? Good people. So Glenn was the father. Don was the son. My first marriage, and this is not, I'm not blaming my wife, Vicky, at the time. She wanted this little Volkswagen Beetle, and man, she wanted that Beetle, and it's going to look real cute with a Success Realty sign on there. So we get this Beetle over in the Quad Cities, we bring it home, and the first week, and I didn't have any license plate frames. I grew up, my dad was a Subaru Mazda dealer here in town. My dad just hated it when people bought out of town, but also he hated it when they had their license plate frames and sticker, because now they're advertising about out of town. It's kind of like, it just always rubbed my dad wrong, and I understood that. So I had no stickers, no license plate frames, but man, the first person I bumped into was a guy named Glenn Browning, and he said, he called me Ramey, and people that knew me growing up, they go, Ramey, he said, where in the hell did you get that Beetle? I said, Glenn, I said, got it at Rock Island. I have a question for you. You sell houses, right? I said, yes, I do. How many homes do you sell in Rock Island? And I said, none. Well, let's search, let me tell you. And he said it's slower than that. He goes, he said, I got 32 people that work at my dealership. He said, how many of those people could be buying a house from you? I said, well, 32. He said, how much of that sales tax went back to our schools and all the different taxing bodies? And I said, probably none, Glenn. So pretty soon, all of a sudden, he worked me over about another minute. And I was so glad about a year later, I sold that Beetle. It's like, oh man, but it's painful. But, and so that, I think the old days of going to Rotary Club on Tuesday at lunch, and you had your people that owned the dealerships. You had Norm Faber, the people remember Norm Faber. That family gave back so much to Princeton. And the Brownies, they would sit there across from each other. And, it was a little harder for the businessman to just gone out and bought a new vehicle out of town. Especially if he was buying a Ford or a Chevy out of town when he maybe should have been buying it locally. Now, the past 2 years, when all of a sudden dealers don't have cars on their inventory and dealers don't like the dealer trade, it gets a little more sticky. So, I don't think I answered your question. I would just say this: it's a challenge. I know that there's some good things going on. They're coming up that I'm aware of because of my real estate business. I won't go into detail tonight. I don't want to tease you, but in real estate, we get the chance to work with people that are coming to town or leaving town, good or bad. And we've got something happening that'll be good for Princeton that's coming up. It's a small scale, but it's a good thing. The past month, I've kind of, in the process of me going to visit other communities, I've had a chance to email the 4 council members that we're going to be working together, saying, hey, just by the way, we sold a building lot over on Prue Street here. There's going to be it's over next to the laundromat. We had our sign up. It's going to be a telecommunication building. There's a company coming to do fiber optic in Princeton. They've been here for 2 years now, putting the lines in, and they're going to compete with Comcast. And people like yourself that has Comcast, we're excited about having an alternate choice. There's a little building lot just south of Sullivan's grocery store that was owned by a local eye doctor. We just sold that, and a small business owner is going to put up a building there. So I call those small victories. Certainly are good things. Can I go with another handout for just a second?
Yeah, and then I'm sure that people in the audience may have some more questions.
Okay, I got a handout, and I got one thing I want to talk about. We saw it in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is a good thing. Okay, here we go. Then we're done. You guys are thinking, man, this guy's got a homework assignment for us. Thank you for doing that.
Are you going to grade them on?
I'm just glad they attended. At this point, we're just glad that you're here tonight. So again, a neat handout. Rick was talking about this movement called Strong Towns, and it's based up in Brainerd, Minnesota. And the gentleman that started Strong Towns, he was actually over at IBCC a couple of years ago, and he spoke. And I got his book. It's just real down to earth, basic things. But this is such a good article. It says, "Heads up, cities need our attention." And it talks about the world we live in. And of course, it starts out, and I'm not going to read this, but it says, "I sometimes joke that I'm becoming a midlife grouch, always complaining about kids these days." And of course, it goes on about the use of our electronic devices and how we basically don't pay attention to what's going on around us. And we've all seen it where kids will be sitting across from each other, texting each other. And I get a kick out in the real estate business, because we're supposed to be good communicators. I'll call another realtor and say, "I'd like to show your listing." I get their voicemail. And they'll say, "Hi, this is Betty Smith from ABC Realty. You can leave a message. However, for quicker service, please text me." Well, what's the difference there? But I mean, okay. So I leave the message, so I'm not going to text, okay? If I leave a nice message, "Hey, Betty, I'd like to show your listing tomorrow at 2 o'clock over there at Putnam Street." So then about 5 or 6, she called. And she goes, "You called?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Did you get my voicemail?" "Oh, I don't play it back. What do you want, Ray?" True story. And they make fun of my flip phone. Let me tell you, they love to beat me up with my flip phone. They tell me, I just say, "Hey, you know what? That flip phone's good technology. Yes, I understand. A smartphone's on the horizon. Don't worry." For you folks that say, "Oh man, this is the next mayor of Princeton, he's got a flip phone." I tell people, if you want to get $20, real simple, you take your flip phone, set it down at McDonald's, walk away for about 10 minutes, come back, and there's always a $20 bill underneath there with a little note saying, "Sorry for your misfortune, wish you the best." Okay, so but this article talks about how we need to pay attention to our communities, and it really, there's some good little PowerPoint or power statements here. It feels almost too obvious to point out, but the greatest asset any city can have is citizens who pay attention to their city and know how to take action on their observations. So it's just a good article. It talks about what you need to intentionally see. A lot of it in our community, boy, if you get out and start walking and you see things that you don't see driving down the road 30 miles an hour, and it's not all bad things. There's a lot of good things that you see, but this was an article I felt worthy of to make a copy of. So I'm going to bring up 2 more things, Rick, and then we can open up for more questions. There's a little note card I really like. This is, I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to pass that one around there. You see, hold on to that one. This is a young lady that did this artwork back when she was 15 years old, maybe 16 years old at Princeton High School. And I just love the artwork so much that I went ahead and contacted her. Now she's 29 years old. She lives in New York City, and her name's on the back of the card. And I asked her, I said, no, I said, I'm running for mayor. I said, I need to have something that we can use as a council to send correspondence, a little note card. I want to be able to have the council members have this at their access. I said, do you still have that little card? She said, well, we haven't had it print for a while. She said, but I can call the printer. She said, how many do you want, Ray? I said, oh, no, okay, 250. So magically, because she's in New York City and over via a few emails, bingo, 250 arrives at Lisa's Pharmacy 2 weeks later. So I appreciate that. It's just a nice card. The goal of that card, if you look, it represents Princeton. It's kind of a quirky card in a good way. And I'm not here to criticize Princeton. I think Princeton, and we're in love with this community. Every one of us here tonight loves our community. And we'll wrestle with somebody if they start telling us that this isn't one of the nicest places to live that you've ever lived at. But I like the card. So that card could be used for, how about if the planning person in our community, Pete Nelson, that does planning and zoning, how about when somebody comes in and wants a building permit to add on to their building in Princeton? For example, Heartland Auto Body, they just put an addition on, or putting it on now. Or I talked about earlier, the folks at Express Flighting. Wouldn't it be nice to send a card from the council to the manager or the owner of that business and say, we just found out you're adding on to your building, and we just want to say thank you for reinvesting in Princeton, have all the council members sign it. And I mean, isn't that a neat gesture? I think it's just, there's a lot of things we could do that are just real low hanging fruit. Rick, I got one more thing. Are you okay? All right.
Yeah.
So I can tell where he's going.
We're at 10 to 8. We're gonna have to.
I'm just about done. Okay. So one of the things that we do is, when I was growing up, there was a gentleman that really did some neat construction. His name was J.B. Johnson. And J.B. Johnson, he would spend his winters in New Mexico. And he'd come back with all these neat ideas. He liked all this new construction. He would do exposed aggregate concrete. And that's back when people didn't do exposed aggregate, that look. He did rough sawn cedar. He had a certain look. When you go into Bryant Woods, they pull into Bryant Woods and go in about one block on the left, he built these condos that kind of had a California style to them. Very unique from 40 years ago. But he would bring back these neat ideas. And I can still see his projects today. They're still there and they look great. And I said, JB, I said, you got some neat ideas. I said, where do you pick up this stuff? He said, Ray, he says, I see something I like. He said, I take a picture of it, I bring it back to Princeton. He said, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I do a lot of picture taking. When we go on our little field trips, and I appreciate Lisa's support. I mean, we go to, like, one day we went to Des Moines, Iowa. We took off early in the morning. Downtown Des Moines is such a neat town, very bicycle friendly. They got a whole homeless encampment go down along the river. I mean, I'm talking 50 tents along the river, but it's just a beautiful community. We like Madison, Wisconsin. We like Beloit. Last week, Saturday, I said, let's go back up to Beloit. There's a lady up there that owns ABC building supplies. She's a billionaire. I'm not talking an M millionaire. I'm talking a billionaire. You Google this lady. Her name is Diane Hendricks. Hendricks, not Hendrickson, Hendricks. She is the Forbes magazine has her as the richest self-made woman as far as her empire in the United States. Wow. And she has her hometown is Beloit. She grew up on a dairy farm outside Beloit. Now she's in her 70s and she puts millions of dollars a year back into downtown Beloit, and it shows. And it doesn't say Hendricks this, Hendricks that. Well, you might see a little Hendricks up way up high or something, but they just built a new baseball diamond or stadium. It's just beautiful. She owns hotels, but she's taken her downtown and really worked hard to polish it up.
If I may interrupt.
Yes. Yeah.
She also helped support probably 20 public sculptures by a person who was born and lived here in Princeton.
Oh.
O.B. Schaefer.
Vern
Schaefer. Same guy who did that sculpture outside here. The largest sculpture in Beloit is what, 45 feet tall. It was welded in the barn with the Telfer zone that we now.
Oh, and it went up there.
Yeah.
Well, we love Mrs. Hendricks. I've never met her. But what she does for her community is really good looking. Now we're going to shift. We're going to go to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And everybody should go see Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You should go to Dubuque, Iowa. A lot of good things going on in Iowa. I told Lisa, I said, if we ever get kicked out of Illinois, I'm going to Iowa. And, I know, that's the flyover, but I just think those Iowans are great people. And so anyway, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, we were there visiting. They got an incubator building. It's a neat building that if you want to start selling tamales or any kind of food related thing, part of this incubator building's got full kitchens. It's got the hood. It's all set up. So you can go in there for say $600 a month, rent a space and start cooking tamales or cooking fried chicken, your grandma's favorite recipe. Neat thing. Okay, downtown Cedar Rapids though, we found this. This was rolled up and it was like this with a rubber band and it had a nice pair of gloves with it and it had a little sleeve going around. It's called the City Manager's Challenge and they call it the one bag challenge. So the city manager, who's been there, I think 14 years now, put this program together. They're asking the residents of Cedar Rapids to pick up one bag of litter every year. And they're doing that, it's as an incentive. They're saying, we're gonna give you the bag, we're gonna give you a pair of gloves, and we're gonna go ahead and encourage you to pick these up. And like the library has them, there's no questions asked. If you need one or two bags, you pick it up, you go ahead and pick up the litter, and you want to get your picture taken and put it on their Facebook page showing your 4-H group had 10 bags of trash picked up. They picked up about just under 19,000 bags of trash since this thing started. This program has been recognized around the nation from other communities. So an idea, I want to make sure he gets credit for it, this city manager, because I'm going to steal his idea. We're going to borrow, okay? But I want him to have credit. So I thought, tonight we talk about problems or challenges, and we got to talk about how we can address those. And so we know every person in this room is a proactive person. Just think, we got 7,900 people in Princeton, and we got 30 of the smartest people in this room tonight, right? Okay, so we're gonna. So I said, Lisa, let's put this together. So we went ahead and we made up 45 of these. What we did was we worked with Ace Hardware Store, not Ace Distribution. I went down there and said, hey, I really like this little light pair of gloves. I need 100 pairs of these gloves. What can you do for me? And they came back an hour later and said, Ray, we're going to sell you these gloves at our cost. So we were able to buy these gloves for about $1.50 for this nice pair of gloves. We got a 2 mil nice big trash bag that's similar to theirs, not as attractive as theirs. We got a trash bag, we got a pair of gloves, and I thought, okay, now how's this going to work? If we have them collect the trash, they're going to be able to put it out with their trash, and I don't know logistics. The city would pick up an extra bag of trash without being identified. Now the city would pick up this in Cedar Rapids, and they would probably do the same thing in the city of Princeton if we identified the bag. But I thought, okay, we're going to go to the next step. We're going to go ahead and buy garbage sticker bags. So I've been the person that bought more stickers for garbage bags than anybody else this month in Princeton. So we have this little combination here. It's all taped together or rubber band together, kind of cute, with the whole kit. We've got these tonight. I'd like to have you take one of these home, and you know what? If you need more than one, we've got 50 of these here all set up. So we're going to help solve this problem tonight. Of course, we're asking you, if you take one of these, go around your neighborhood, go find a park, anywhere in this public property. If you got a neighbor, go knock on the door. Hey, neighbor, I'm going to pick up your trash for you. I'm going to ask them first. But this should be foolproof. It should be able to help us clean our community. It's good for the city. It makes you feel good. And it's a way that you can help in a small way, but it's an important way. I pick up a lot of trash in Princeton. I love what I do on Main Street. People say to me, they compliment me, and I say, this is therapy. I'd have to take up golf or something like that. And who wants to go around chasing a ball around a golf course? So we started picking up trash on Main Street. We have the Adopted Highway program from the railroad tracks going out to the interstate, and then we pick up some trash in other places. But the whole point is, we get out by the interstate, and I'm almost done, Rick. You appreciate this. When you travel and you get ready to get off of an interstate to stop at a town that you've never been at, you're stopping at that town to get fuel or maybe stay at the hotel that night. I judge that community by when I pull off the interstate. So now I'm not staying at Cicero, but we'll run to Midway Airport to drop people off or pick them up. You get off at 55, you stop there at that interchange there where you're getting off there, and you stop, you wait for light to change, trash everywhere, and weeds, so this tall. Why would I stop here? We went to Ann Arbor, Michigan last year. We made a stop on the way up, about halfway up in a community that the interchange was a mess. Even the McDonald's was a mess. And I said, there's no pride in what they do. The same thing happens out on our front doorstep there, that interstate. When you leave Peru, you're coming back to Princeton, and you get off there, there's always usually a mess out there. It just seems like people, they start throwing water bottles and everything else out, and then they do the same thing when they jump back on the interstate. And so I've been out there now the past couple of years. I usually go out there Sunday mornings. I got my little safety vest, go out there, I pick up trash. it's very easy to get 6 or 8 bags of trash in about 2 hours. There was a guy out there last year that was, and I don't care if he panhandles, he's out there, he had a little dog, and it wasn't the guy underneath the caboose, it was a different guy. And so he'd be out there panhandling, and the next day I'd go out there to pick up trash on a Sunday morning. Man, anything anybody gave him was out there, leftover wrappers, bottles, cans. And then he got his little dog, there's a little water bottle device at the quart mason jar with like a little pan that's attached to the bottle. So I'm picking all this stuff up. Of course, he's not around. And so the next week I go out there, sure enough, there's a guy. And I go up to him, I'm on my little John Deere Gator. I go, sir, I said, I'm just volunteering to pick up trash. I don't care if you panhandle, but you got to pick up your trash. I said, this is not right, all the trash. He goes, how did you lift my trash? I said, well, that's your dog? Yep. I said, are you missing the dog's water bowl? Yeah, do you have it? I said, I do. I said, I'm gonna give you that back. I said, but you gotta pick up your trash. I said, I'm not gonna tolerate this. I said, I'll have to turn it into the police. I said,
So what you're saying here is that people could just take those gloves right there and those bags and everybody could do their part.
Tonight, I'm really hoping we can see all these. I'm gonna put waves back here. You know what? We'll put them right back here. As you leave, you have a.
Okay, I'm assuming that some of you might have some questions or ideas, and I'm also assuming that he would gladly listen to them. Even though we only heard the flip phone.
Yeah, that's one of my.
We need to leave in 5 minutes. One thing I would ask you, maybe some of you have some other burning questions, is what's the best and the worst part of being in city government?
Well, I think Jerry would say, I really don't think we have politics at our level. We shouldn't. It's problem solving. So we catch slack when and rightly so, when we have sewer backups, and that's becoming less and less. We catch flack over things that we just need to be brought to our attention. So I think when we're trying to solve problems, I think that's rewarding for us. So I think that we're problem solvers. We're not politicians. And so
What's the worst part?
well, I'd say in my 8 years I was on the council, I got into it with 2 city managers. One of them, and it was a guy that came in my office at 6 o'clock in the morning and cussed me out. I had heard more cuss words, and in the military 27 years, I've heard them all. And we had it out, and he's no longer with us. And a lot of times a council member, in my opinion, will make a poor decision if they're given poor information or not accurate information. And you rely on your city manager, you rely on your department heads to give you concise information that should be neutral, hopefully not swaying you one way, or if they're trying to sway you, they explain why they're swaying you towards that idea. I probably made my poorest decisions with what I call poor information. We were on the council. The hospital back then would come once a year to the council meeting with a PowerPoint presentation, tell us how much they made last year or how much they lost. It would be the person from the hospital, the administrator. Usually they bring the COO along, Chief Operating Officer. I'm sorry, the CFO, Chief Financial Officer. And I remember sitting on one of those meetings where, well, we're going to actually, we're earmarked, we're on track to make $800,000 this year. It looks really good. We have no debt. And we're like, great, that's great. And then they came back a little bit later. So we need to build this new medical clinic. It's going to be just under $5 million because by the time we renovate the second and third stories, we can put that money into a new state-of-the-art medical clinic, and we have no debt, and we just need the city to agree to the bonding of it. We're like, okay. And then we come back, oh, now we're losing $3.4 million. I mean, and that's a true story. That was reported in the paper. And we were riding that rodeo, and it was not a fun rodeo to ride because we can only encourage and support things that we're told. And so I tell people, if you're fed bologna, you're making bologna sandwiches. And you know what I'm saying? It is. So it irritates me that we don't get always good information. We got some tremendous people on our staff at the city. And I think that sometimes you got to just do your due diligence to make sure you're not being fed bologna.
Well, and I've seen your sign about positivity. I would want to end on the note that sort of describes what you meant by that. But so, 2-4 years from now, what would be the best thing what would you feel the best about happening in city government?
Sure. Okay, so we don't want to raise taxes. I think we've got people that are just barely able to make it. We got to have this divide where we got people that are making 100,000 a year, retirees. We got people down there that are just barely making it. And so we gotta be careful. You just can't, make Princeton any more expensive to live in of a community. So we gotta be careful with our taxes, our utilities, things like that. I told you earlier on in my little discussion, I'd love to solve the problem out there at the city county park. I consider it to be a problem, although, no one's ever been killed out there. I have fears about that. I think we've got, a community that we want to remain feeling that we live in a safe community. And I think we've got a tremendous police chief that is currently with us. I think he does a tremendous job every day doing that. In 4 years' time, I would hope that I could say to you, we've got a community that is more working together with these other taxing bodies, with the park district, the elementary, high school, that we're just all in a cohesive agreement. On most cases, we're still gonna have disagreements. Ollie's will be up and running again. I take no credit for that. And eventually, when they have some of their incentives that will no longer be in place, they'll be paying a hefty tax bill. And if that's a $60 million project, the tax bill for Ace Hardware is based on a $8 million valuation. They're going to, besides creating jobs, which is tremendous, they're going to be paying in taxes to our community, which is great. So, I go back to maybe, I don't want to sound like there's no, I like to look at the big picture, and I like to think that I'm like the guy that went out in a rowboat. He had his jar of tartar sauce, and he's trying to catch Moby Dick. That's the kind of guy I am, and I'm an optimist. But I think that if we can continue the quality of life, maybe improve it, because I see some things that, as a realtor, that I don't see. There's evictions going on. There's foreclosures. Man, when you see these poor houses where you can tell it's foreclosure, all the furniture's out, and then it just sits out there for like 2 or 3 weeks at a time. It's kind of ugly. So, I think we're all heading in the right direction. I think it's just a matter of improving our quality of life, and it's little things from picking up trash, but also big things of really making sure that we are fiscally responsible with how we spend our money.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming. Appreciate you.